Some objects aren't just haunted, they're patient. They wait, and when you least expect it, they destroy. From a vase that kills its owners, to a painting that moves at night, to a crying boy that somehow survives every house fire. These aren't urban legends. They were sold, they were framed, and they were very, very real. Hit subscribe if you want more stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Case 1. The Basano Vase, a beauty never meant to be found. In the quiet hill towns of southern Italy, there are stories people don't write down. Stories passed from grandmother to granddaughter, whispered under breath when certain names are mentioned or when old attics are cleaned out and things, beautiful, strange things are found. One of those stories is about a vase, a silver vase, ornate, weighty, too perfect to discard, too cursed to keep. They call it the Basano Vase. Its legend begins not in a museum or on a collector's shelf, but in death. Sometime in the 15th century, in a small village near Naples, a young bride was gifted the vase the night before her wedding. Some say it was an heirloom. Others say it was a one-of-a-kind commission from a local artisan. Whatever its origin, it was exquisite, flawless in symmetry, with delicate filigree etched around its base, and a curious symbol carved just beneath the rim, a serpent eating its own tail. The bride never made it to the altar. She was found dead in her home that same night, the vase beside her, her fingers still curled around its base. No wounds, no signs of illness, just gone. Her final words, according to family members who would recount the tale years later, were whispered so faintly that only her mother heard them. "Beware, this vase carries death." The family, gripped with grief and fear, tried to rid themselves of the object. Some say it was buried with her. Others insist it was hidden in the walls of the house. But the vase did not stay buried. Centuries passed. And then, in the early 1900s, during a home renovation in the very same region, the vase resurfaced literally. Workers unearthed it beneath the foundation of an old villa being converted into a winery. It was intact, untarnished, almost glowing. An antique dealer who examined it noted the craftsmanship was consistent with Renaissance-era metalwork. No one could explain how it had survived in such pristine condition. It was quickly purchased by a local pharmacist with a taste for rare items. 3 months later, he was dead. Heart attack. Unexpected. He was 38. The vase passed to his sister. She died of a stroke. Then a prominent surgeon bought it, collapsed in the middle of a procedure, dead before he hit the floor. By this point, whispers had begun, quiet rumors dismissed as superstition. But when a young archaeologist acquired the vase and died in a car crash just 2 weeks later, even skeptics took pause. 4 owners, 4 deaths, all within a year. Word got around. The Italian authorities reportedly stepped in not because of a curse, but because the object was now considered a public concern. Attempts were made to house the vase in a museum, but curators refused. Some cited insurance issues. Others simply said no. Eventually, it ended up in the possession of a private collector in Turin who dismissed the stories as coincidence. He survived for a while longer than the others. But he wasn't untouched. He claimed the vase brought with it an oppressive energy. Guests refused to stay the night in his home. Pets would not go near the room where it was displayed. He tried to sell it. No one would buy. In desperation, he reportedly tossed the vase from his second-floor balcony, narrowly missing a police officer walking by. The collector was fined for public endangerment. When asked why he did it, he told police, "It wants to be buried. I don't want to be next." The authorities seized the vase. For years, its whereabouts were unknown, until in 1988 it surfaced at an auction house in central Italy. No mention was made of its history. The listing simply read, "Silver vase, 15th century origin. Estimated value 4 million lira. It sold in under 10 minutes. The buyer, a pharmacist from Naples, was dead within 3 months. Eventually, someone added a small note to the vase's box. "Beware, this vase brings death." By the 1990s, no collector wanted it. It passed from estate to estate, often left in attics or locked drawers, until finally someone had the idea to bury it again. But this time the authorities allegedly intervened. It's said the vase now lies sealed in a lead box deep underground in an undisclosed location. Whether that's true is unclear. No official record of its current whereabouts exists, and perhaps that's for the best. Some skeptics argue that the curse was nothing more than a chain of coincidences, a psychological illusion amplified by grief and fear. They point out that silver was once commonly laced with trace amounts of mercury, and prolonged exposure could in theory cause illness or hallucinations. Others say the story was simply a fabrication and urban legend crafted by antique dealers to raise intrigue or justify a sudden disappearance of a valuable piece. But there are holes in those explanations. Mercury poisoning doesn't cause sudden cardiac arrest. It doesn't explain why healthy, unrelated individuals in separate decades, some in entirely different regions, died under the same conditions. And if the story was invented, why would so many people who handled the vase die? A former assistant at the auction house that handled the vase in 1988 reportedly quit his job after moving the object into the display room. His reasoning: "I touched it, and my chest tightened. My cousin died a week later. I didn't want to see what came next." It's anecdotal, unprovable, but so are most legends that endure. In the quiet corners of the internet, collectors still whisper about cursed objects. There's a list passed among private forums items considered too dangerous to display. The Basano vase is almost always in the top 5. One collector in Milan claimed to have been offered the vase under a false name, Il Contenitore di Nozze, the wedding container. When he asked about its history, the dealer reportedly went pale and refused to discuss it further. The collector declined the purchase. He died 6 weeks later of a brain aneurysm. Again, coincidence. Possibly. But with the Basano vase, coincidence seems to follow pattern, and patterns begin to look like purpose. A retired professor of folklore once theorized that the vase wasn't cursed at all, but rather a ritual object designed to contain something. A vessel not of art, but of imprisonment. He believed removing it from the tomb broke a seal, a boundary, and everything that followed was the result of that breach. There's no way to prove it, but in Naples some still speak of the vase in hushed tones, not out of fear of the object itself, but of what it might still carry. There's a rumor whispered in the back rooms of antique shops and among archivists that the last person known to photograph the Basano vase never developed the film. He died 2 days later in a traffic accident. The camera was found intact, but the film was missing. The photo, if it existed, has never surfaced. That's perhaps the most unsettling part of this entire legend. No one alive today can say for certain what the vase actually looked like. And yet many say they recognize it when they see it, as if it remembers the ones who got away. So where is it now? No one knows. And maybe that's the safest place for it to be. Not in a museum, not in a catalog, but gone. Because some beauty wasn't meant to be admired. It was meant to be buried. But even if the Basano vase is never found again, its story still lingers quietly like a cold draft in a sealed room. Some say its curse is still active, passed not through touch, but through attention. That speaking its name aloud, searching for it, even watching a story about it, might be enough to draw its presence closer. Folklorists call this resonance haunting, the belief that certain objects don't just contain energy, but emit it through story, through fear, through memory. In 2003, a museum curator in Rome reportedly received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a photograph of an ornate silver vase placed on a cloth. The vase bore uncanny resemblance to descriptions of the Basano. There was no return address, no fingerprints, only a note that read, "I buried it again. Don't dig it up." To this day, the museum won't confirm or deny the letter ever existed. But some employees say that for a few weeks, a certain storage room was kept locked without explanation, just in case. The legend of the Basano vase persists, not because of evidence, but because of absence. No one has proven it real, but no one can prove it didn't exist either. And in a world where beauty often hides danger, sometimes it's the things we can't verify that haunt us the most. So the next time you see an antique, a vase with no markings, A piece too perfect to be forgotten. Ask yourself one question. Was it ever meant to be found? Case 2. The hands resist him. The painting that watches back. It started as a painting. Just oil on canvas, no darker than dozens of others hanging quietly in second-hand stores across America. But the hands resist him was different. The moment it appeared on eBay in early 2000, it ignited one of the internet's earliest viral hauntings, and no one who looked into its eyes seemed to walk away unchanged. Painted in 1972 by California artist Bill Stoneham, the piece was never meant to disturb. He said it was autobiographical, a representation of his childhood. It shows a solemn-faced boy standing beside a lifelike doll in front of a glass-paneled door. Behind the glass are countless disembodied children's hands pressed against the panes as though trying to get out or perhaps reach in. The expression on the boy's face is hollow. The doll's eyes are void. She holds what looks like a dry cell battery fused with wires, though some claimed it resembled a weapon. The lighting is cold. The tension is suffocating. For nearly 3 decades, the painting moved quietly from gallery to private ownership. No known incident, no curse, not yet. But that changed when a California couple listed the painting on eBay with a disturbing message the artwork they claimed was haunted, and they had photographic evidence. Their listing read like a horror movie. They said the doll and the boy would move at night. The couple had set up a motion-activated camera in the room where the painting was stored. One image, they claimed, showed the doll pointing the gun at the boy. Another showed the boy stepping out of the canvas into the room. No one else was in the house. The couple swore their children complained of voices of sudden temperature drops of nausea when near the painting. Their pets refused to enter the room. And when the couple moved the painting to the garage, things got worse. Lights flickered, and one family member reportedly collapsed from a mysterious illness. Even more unnerving was the disclaimer at the bottom of the listing: "We are not responsible for any effects or consequences from viewing or owning this painting." It wasn't a joke, it was a warning. Viewers online began reporting symptoms: headaches, dizziness, nightmares. Some claimed the painting gave them intense anxiety. Others said their computers froze or shut down when they tried to enlarge the image. One woman claimed she fainted just minutes after seeing it. Another wrote that she felt like she was being watched for days after viewing the eBay page. Emails flooded the sellers begging them to take the painting down. Others demanded to know if it had caused any deaths. Within a week, the auction had gone viral. Bidding skyrocketed. It eventually sold for just over $1,000, not a fortune, but far beyond the expected price for a relatively unknown artist's early work. The winning bidder was Perception Gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They had no concerns about the curse. Bill Stoneham, the original artist, was alive and curious about the sudden attention. When contacted, he was surprised but not entirely dismissive. He explained that the boy in the painting was based on a childhood photograph. The doll was modeled after a real-life prop from a local theater. The hands, they represented the countless possibilities and expectations reaching out from childhood toward the unknown future. There was no intention of menace, no occult ritual behind its creation, just symbolism filtered through memory. But Stoneham also shared something odd. When the painting was first exhibited in 1974 at a Los Angeles gallery, it received critical acclaim. Within a year, both the art critic who reviewed the show and the gallery owner who displayed it were dead. And Stoneham's agent at the time, he passed shortly after. None of the deaths were violent, but all were unexpected. That wasn't proof, of course, just a string of coincidences. But in the world of haunted objects, coincidence is often enough. The painting has remained in Perception Gallery's collection ever since. They've never reported paranormal activity, but they rarely display the piece in public. Visitors occasionally request to see it, and when they do, the staff sets clear boundaries. No touching, no flash photography, and certainly no overnight stays in its presence. In the years following the eBay listing, "The Hands Resist Him" became internet legend. Creepypasta forums retold the story. YouTubers made entire documentaries. The photo from the original auction still circulates, sparking fresh waves of paranoia and fascination. Some users claim that printing the image leads to electrical issues in their homes. Others say their children cry when shown the painting even without context. What makes the painting so unnerving isn't just the visual. It's the ambiguity, the lack of clear danger. The boy looks real, but not quite alive. The doll's empty eyes never break contact. The hands are frozen but feel desperate. And perhaps most haunting of all is that no one knows what the boy is looking at, only that whatever it is, he's standing still for it, waiting. There's no record of anyone dying directly because of the painting. No fire, no violent hauntings, no possessions. And yet people continue to report being deeply unsettled. Viewers describe it as more disturbing than gore, more terrifying than jump scares. Because it doesn't try to frighten, it simply exists in silence. Skeptics, of course, dismiss it all. They say the movement in the photos was staged, that the lighting and shadow effects were manipulated, that eBay was a breeding ground for these stunts in the early internet era. And maybe they're right, but for every skeptic there's someone else who refuses to even open the image, who scrolls past quickly, who whispers that they felt something strange in the room when they first saw it. And isn't that, in the end, what a haunting really is? Not proof, not science, just a feeling you can't shake, a pair of painted eyes that watch long after the browser tab is closed. The hands resist him doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it waits, and sometimes that's more than enough. Case 3. The Crying Boy Painting, the curse that burned but never touched. They called it the Curse of the Crying Boy. By the late 1980s, fire departments across the United Kingdom had begun to notice something strange. When responding to house fires, sometimes devastating, sometimes fatal, one object kept turning up unharmed, hanging on scorched walls. A painting. Always the same painting. A young boy with tear-streaked cheeks, his eyes staring directly out at the viewer. Sometimes sad, sometimes blank, but always untouched. While the rest of the home was reduced to ash and rubble, the boy remained, his face unburned, his sorrow intact. The painting wasn't rare. In fact, it had become a mass-produced print sold at department stores and catalogs throughout the 1970s and 80s. Tens of thousands of British homes had it. Most people never thought twice. It was marketed as the Crying Boy, and there were even companion pieces crying girls, other young children in sorrowful poses. But it was the boy, specifically one version painted by a man using the pseudonym Giovanni Bragolin, that drew the darkest attention. The hysteria began in 1985 when The Sun, a British tabloid, ran a sensational front-page article titled "Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy." It featured the account of Ron and May Hall, a couple from Rotherham, South Yorkshire. Their house had been gutted by fire. Nearly everything was destroyed: furniture, family photos, heirlooms. Everything except one item: the Crying Boy painting. It had fallen from the wall, they said, and was found face down on the floor, completely untouched by flame or smoke. The article went on to cite other similar stories. Different towns, different families, same painting, same survival, and always unexplained, fast-moving fires. What began as a curiosity quickly became an urban legend. People started coming forward with their own stories. A woman in Surrey claimed her house caught fire the day after she hung the painting. A pizza shop owner in Norfolk said his kitchen burned to the ground while the Crying Boy painting remained spotless on the wall. A mother in Nottingham swore she had 2 of the paintings, and both her sons suffered bizarre accidents within a month. Some firemen began refusing to remove the paintings from fire scenes, fearing bad luck. Others joked, but uneasily, that it was cursed, that it somehow resisted fire not by design, but by some unseen force. Investigators tried to find rational explanations. The painting was printed on fire-retardant board, some said. It was coated in varnish that resisted flames. Maybe the spot on the wall it hung was just lucky. But that didn't explain the frequency, or the pattern, or the consistent stories from unrelated households. And it certainly didn't explain the other rumors. Stories began circulating that the boy in the painting was real and cursed. Some said he was an orphan from Italy whose parents died in a house fire. Others claimed the artist Bragolin had adopted the boy only for the child to die tragically in a blaze shortly after the painting was completed. One version insisted the child had caused the fire through supernatural means, and that any home displaying his likeness would be marked by tragedy. The truth about the artist is murky. Bragolin was actually a pseudonym. His real name was Bruno Amadio, a Venetian painter who created a series of portraits known as I ragazzi piangenti, the crying boys. They were meant to evoke sympathy, raw emotion, even pity. But something in the rendering of the eyes, the fixed expression, the stillness, unnerved people. The more the legend grew, the more fear took hold. In a surreal twist, The Sun followed up its original article with a public call. If you owned one of the crying boy paintings and wanted to rid yourself of it, bring it in. Hundreds of people did. Some mailed them. Some arrived in person. The newspaper collected them all. And then in a strange moment of theatrical closure, they organized a mass burning. A bonfire in an open lot. Stacks of crying boy paintings ripped, thrown, condemned. The fire consumed them without resistance. But not everyone was convinced the curse had lifted. Even today, decades later, the painting continues to provoke unease. Online forums, paranormal blogs, and YouTube videos revisit the legend regularly. Some people who claim to own a copy report feelings of dread or sadness while in the same room. Others say they've suffered inexplicable misfortunes since acquiring one, usually unknowingly from a thrift shop or estate sale. Skeptics are quick to dismiss it all as mass hysteria, the fires, coincidence, the unburned painting, materials, the stories, exaggeration. They point out that thousands of households had the painting with no incident, that newspapers like The Sun capitalized on public fear for sales, that rumors beget rumors. But for many, the doubt doesn't erase the unease. Because a pattern like this across towns, across years, across unrelated people is hard to explain away, especially when the evidence is a face, a boy's face, staring out from a painting that has time and again refused to burn. Some owners have even sealed their copies in boxes stored away in attics or basements, unwilling to destroy it but too afraid to hang it again. And then there are those who keep it displayed anyway, as a conversation piece, as a dare, as a challenge to the unknown. Whether cursed or not, the crying boy painting has carved a place in paranormal folklore unlike any other object of art. It didn't need to be ancient or mysterious in origin. It came from a store shelf. It entered homes through catalogs. It watched quietly from walls, in kitchens, and bedrooms. And sometimes, it stayed behind long after everything else was gone. To this day, no one has been able to definitively explain why. Some curses don't scream, they whisper, until you believe. If stories like these haunt your thoughts, subscribe for more. We'll be waiting, right here on Roadside Tales.